Hey, am I on? I'm on.
I will. Yeah,
Hey,
we're
man.
back for part two. How are you doing?
Part two, man. Good. Am I frozen still?
No, you're all good. You're all good.
Okay.
So yeah, one of the things that was dropping in for me as a question was, do you consider yourself an actor as well? I know I've seen online that you've done some actual acting, and I wondered when you kind of got into because a lot of your comedy online, you can very quickly go between different characters and
Yeah.
change your face and change your voice. So I just
Yeah.
wonder what your connection with acting is, or would you consider that's partly what you do, or
Oh, I love acting. Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah. I've done, some acting. I did a few commercials in New York years ago and some voiceover work out here. I played Mephisto in Faust last year at the Canterbury Shakespeare
yeah, I
Festival,
saw that, yeah,
and that was fun. That was the role I wanted to because I wanted to play the devil,
right,
and it was yeah, no, there's something about voices and characters I find very safe, and I had an abusive childhood, wah, wah, wah. But I did find that you could like kind of get out of it by retreating in your mind and just being somebody else for a long stretch of time, and it's like you weren't there. It's a trick. I mean,
okay,
some of the psychiatrists who don't like joy might say that I was avoiding something, and I probably was, but it created a huge chrysalis of characters.
yeah,
But yeah, I definitely consider myself an actor, and I would like to do more of it.
yeah,
Last summer with the Shakespeare Festival was first time in ages where I'd been in a play, and what I really loved about that was being with other. I did miss being with other people. Where I've always I always wanted to be part of a sketch troupe, but I never could find anybody that I gelled with
right,
to bounce ideas off of. And like Python, I always envied Python because they had each one had five other people to toss things around with, and but being in a cast last year was a lot of fun.
nice.
The idea of everybody having, and I kind of feel that a little bit with this band I just joined too, because
Mm.
I've not done music in ages, but the idea of this is my place on the stage, and you jump in with the bass line here, and
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. So I guess there is part of me that a lot of what I've done over the years has been solo, as you say, switching rapidly between characters and doing 40, 50 characters in one show, and
yeah.
sometimes with lifespans of 90 seconds and then moving on. But yeah, I love
Sure.
that.
And when I was watching some of your back catalogue of stuff, there was a time when you were doing a stand-up character, Sarah, on stage.
Mm.
Um, And there was some comments I saw on some videos of this saying that you were effectively trolling people and you were effectively being
Yeah.
very what's the phrase? Very straight faced and your poker face, and you were just in a particular comic role and you were kind of fooling people quite well. Uh, what's your take on that? What and that time period of your life? And
It was something I wanted to do,
okay,
and then for 7 months I did it, and then I didn't want to do it anymore.
okay,
And I got a crash course, and this is not the way we do it. If you do this, you must do only that, and you must talk only about that, and
okay,
you have to play that string out. And after 7 months, I didn't want to do it anymore. And then that's you do things because you either want to do them or not to do them, and you don't realize that, like, no, this is the world we live in now. Is they want to go, okay, you're this.
right,
So on one side, I had the Guardian showering me with love. Celebrities were popping up out of the blue to wish me luck on my journey. And then at the end of those 7 months, it was like, you liar, you troll. I was
okay,
called horrible stuff.
okay,
This is not a choice, and that dreadful word choice, which people really seem to hate. This is not a choice. Nobody chooses this way. And then
okay.
and I was always like, I'm of the Lou Reed school. Like, yeah, I do this because I want to do it. I don't want to do it. So if you got a problem
Okay.
with it.
Right.
And but yeah, so it's something I want to do. But at the same time, when I went to Edinburgh that year, I think people expect that to be the only thing you talk about, and it wasn't. And I had tons of other. So basically, I was doing what I'd always done comedically. I
Yeah.
was just wearing a skirt and a wig while I did it.
Right.
And then, yeah, it's sad to be. I mean, I'm really obsessed about this particular topic because there's a lot of people now, they'll go to a comedy coach, or I want to get into comedy. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to talk about. And they'll say, oh, you're half Mexican. Talk about that. And
Right,
then it's this parade of this is me, me, me. So if I was going to do that, I'd say I'm a tall guy from Missouri living in England, and boy, we Americans sure are stupid. We read the Bible and shoot guns.
right.
And it's an easy thing, but I never understood why you would want to get into comedy if you didn't already have something to talk about. And so I thought it would be great. Somebody dresses up as a woman, and then you get all these people coming to the show expecting to hear this brave tale about their personal journey and all that, and you don't even mention it.
Yeah,
And I think that's the ultimate way, because it exposes the hypocrisy of audiences
yeah,
who think that they're really good people. Like I'm going to go see this XYZ disabled person or transgender person, because I'm a good person. And then they go there and they don't get the show that they expected. They go, wait just a second. I wanted to hear you go on and on about your gender identity.
yeah,
I want
yeah,
my money back.
yeah,
And I think there's a hypocritical streak in audiences that they really kind of want a bedlam. Let's visit the madhouse, let's visit the circus, so we can all pat ourselves on the back and say, I'm a wonderful person. And I think comedy should be about upending expectations. So when I was wearing the skirt and the wig, people were expecting me to, do a big weepy show about that, and I wasn't. I was still attacking outwards and satirically.
I wonder if that's in part because of their attachments to just concepts of man and women, and because
Yeah,
you were saying you were switching, they were going, okay, well, you've got to then, therefore, they're projecting all these other attachments onto that
yeah,
character, so to speak, that you were doing at the time.
I think so. Yeah, and it's funny to see that as the years have gone on that people really have lost their minds over this issue. That you'll have one side that says, like, they'll take the most extreme examples of, men should perform in women's gymnastics or whatever. And then you got this other side that is pretending that it's this feminist issue that, this is men. It's very funny that you get some men and they say, like, I'm defending women and children and women and young girls, when in reality is one of the most anti-feminist thing you can say. Like I need to leave it up to the men to take care of the women and girls, and I'm not, instead of talking about I don't know, the bullies in the police department, or just regular chauvinistic attitudes or regular domestic abuse, they go after men who dress up as women, and it's a very stock comedic trope, I think, for people that it's easy, it's like a low hanging fruit. But I learned a lot in those 7 months about expect. I had people come out of the woodwork. Curtis Brown Publishers wanted to know if I wanted to write a book. The BBC came sniffing around again after, since the first when I first came to this country. The BBC was wanting to know, do you have any ideas? And they didn't like any of the ones I had. So like I hadn't heard from them in years, and all of a sudden I put on the skirt and the dress, and they
Wow.
want to know if I've got any sitcom ideas. All of a sudden, they didn't like them
Wow.
because none of them had to do with me wearing a skirt and a dress. But
Uh-huh.
it showed the superficial. There's a lot of superficial that calls itself diversity, and it's not diversity. It's it's a freak show. They want a freak show. They want an identity parade.
Yeah, I guess
But
they just want something that they can perhaps use for a broader agenda, and perhaps at that point in time,
yeah.
you look like you might fit it, and they're therefore,
And I
uh,
must be honest, sometimes I wished I did have that, or I did lack that I could
yeah,
say, just fake it, write the book about, my personal journey, and then, because that's where the money is. See, I may go where the art is, but where the direction of the art is never these days where the money is. So
yeah,
like, oh God, if I'd only sold out there, if I could have kept that wig on, or on the other hand, if I would have just kept up this stupid political stuff with Comedy Unleashed, like, yeah, 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 you can't say anything nowadays, isn't it horrible? Then I could have had money that way. But it's at the end of the rainbow, and all of these, whether you're left, whether you're fake right, fake left, because they're not real anymore. But whatever direction you're coming from, it's all about career and money.
yeah,
It's not about if you're doing anything on an individual eccentric
yeah,
level, it's hard to turn that into money.
yeah.
Now they just say, well,
And it's a
what's the catch?
system. And it's a system set up with gatekeepers at numerous stages as well, isn't it?
Yeah,
So I think
yeah,
I think, but the thing that I thought would be quite powerful to get back to is just this laughter in itself as
mm,
a energy forms quite an interesting thing, isn't it? And you've obviously played loads of different venues over your time, and you also know how to create really funny stuff. And it was lovely here when you were talking about how you created Baby Reindeer. It almost sounded like you were improvising it as you went along. You were just stream
yeah,
of consciousness kind of flow, which
yeah.
um, interested me. But there's something magical about human beings laughing, isn't there?
Oh,
And
yeah,
that
yeah,
that ability to get people in a room collectively all laughing, or even if they're just sitting watching something at home. But there's something really beautifully powerful about that that's difficult to, I suppose, to logically necessarily rationalize, isn't it?
yeah,
There's something quite magical at play in that art form of creation, I think. Like everybody can remember laughing with somebody or laughing at a favorite scene of a movie or
yeah,
and it's very powerful. And I'm sure it's something. It dropped in for me today. I'm sure it's something that AI technology wouldn't be able to understand.
yeah,
When you're using satire, you're kind of
yeah.
being creative. And yeah, I just wondered what your thoughts on laughter and all the journey that you've had, kind of making people laugh over the years. And it sounds like you make yourself laugh on quite a lot of occasions when you're thinking about
Yeah.
certain concepts. So, what's your thoughts on that?
I think it saved my life on numerous occasions. I mean, from a very early age, there was a friend of mine, and he never had any interest in being a comedian, and he was the first fellow weirdo I think I met in my small town, and we would just make up weird words together. We used to drive out in the country with a cassette recorder and free form, just stream of consciousness. And I'd fill up a little bit until I ran out of steam. I'd pass it to him, and we fill up these cassette tapes. And those early friends of mine, it was very influential to not just try to be funny, but to be weird. Like I would introduce them to Beckett. He might introduce me to Allen Ginsberg. We'd find something together like some old Peter Cook albums and stuff like that. And so not just finding humor, but people who were using humor intelligently, absurdly, surrealistically, and yeah, it was freeing. Laughter is, I hate as a cliche, is the best medicine. I was going to say something
Yeah.
really wanky and cliche like that, but yeah, it saved my life. I think on numerous occasions that when all else fails, find something funny about it, and sometimes for me it's also anti-authoritarian. I
Yeah.
mean, I remember going to some open mics in San Francisco when I got started, and I never went to go to comedy open mics. So see, I never liked stand-up comedy. I don't like watching it. I don't like,
Right.
the take the mic off the stand and just rap about here. I hate that. And
Okay.
I'd always do music or poetry open mics. And San Francisco in the day had plenty of those. And we would go to these very serious, solemn events. They're doing poetry about, the new age style poetry. And my friend and I would sit in the back and just try to suppress our giggles and it's that feeling of being it's an anti-authoritarian thing if used correctly. I go on a big deal about the difference between the head laugh and the belly laugh. That
Okay.
a lot of times, if you go to a show nowadays, you'll hear a lot of head laughter, like that's me, all right. I can identify with that,
Right. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it never goes from here to the stomach. And
Okay.
that belly laugh is what I want. It's what I want it's what I want to receive, and it's what I want to give. That just rips it out of you violently. It's a violent thing, and that was always the laughter I wanted to go for. I wanted to just so in lieu of that, if I can't have the laughter, I still have that violent impulse. And I think the quote that I'm always going on about is William Blake's without contraries is no progression. You can't have that laughter, that healing moment until you first have that violent, you know,
Yeah.
separation between, let's say, what is real and what is not real, or comedy is wish fulfillment. Like I wish, the king was beheaded or whatever. Therefore, I'm going to do a bit about the king being beheaded, and it's as good as because it happened in my imagination. So there's an anti-authoritarianism to laughter if done correctly, and especially the belly laugh.
Yeah.
Sometimes the head laugh, if you're aiming for the head laugh, you're just aiming for a confirmation of society. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
we all agree and we're all laughing together, but the
Hmm.
belly laugh kind of separates the wheat from the chaff.
And normally those belly laughs are times when you're going, "Oh my gosh, that's so good. I hadn't thought of that, or I wouldn't have thought of that, or
Yeah,
that's a bit outrageous." And
yeah.
it's that kind of and it's very bonding if you have that shared with other people, I think.
Oh
And
yeah,
that's one of those magical things I was thinking about, like when you can um like you can be having quite a stress strained relationship with whether it's a relative or whatever, or there could be a stressful situation, but if you can sometimes something might happen that creates a laugh that can just
yeah.
diffuse all that, and just it's
Oh
a
yeah,
kind of magical thing, isn't it? I think
oh
that's
yeah.
on a human level, for
See,
sure.
my father had no sense of humor
Okay.
whatsoever. And when he would go on the road for his work, and so when he would leave, it was my sisters and myself, and it was first off there was a safety there when he was gone, but then in the midst of all that, I found that I would impersonate my father,
Ah,
you know,
okay.
as a 5, 6 year old, going, "God damn it, Dad," remember, and then they would laugh, and
Okay.
maybe that's when I first realized that that's what it
Yeah.
was. It's like whatever the antithesis of his miserable, violent,
Right.
uh, depressed way of being was, my father, the negation, the antithesis of that, what must therefore be laughter and frivolity and sticking two fingers to the order that he was trying to establish on everything. So,
Mhm.
and I've carried that through to today. Like if we're supposed to be reverent about when Boris Johnson or Keir Starmer says, we're doing our best to be net zero by 2030, I feel that it's incumbent upon us to be irreverent about that. And if we're not, we have to assume, therefore, that government is somehow right. And I will never believe that a bunch of people who are paid to suck taxes out of people are ever going to be right or moral about anything. Just
Mm.
to give you one example. So I think, you can extend from the Freudian with the, your upbringing or whatever,
Mm.
to extend it out to the bigger political, geopolitical structure and say, this is the way all comedians should regard every institution, whether it's fake left, fake right, or whatever, anything that's trying to say we know what's best.
Mm.
That's where laughter comes in and says, who are you kidding?
Mm.
We're on to you, and here's a big pie right in your face,
Mm.
or a
And
banana peel on the pavement.
what I find fascinating from what you just shared, thank you for doing that, about your childhood
Yeah.
experiences, even though it was at the time tricky for you, somehow you knew about there was a magical thing there of knowing how to turn something, a life situation, into humorous and transform it in some sort of way. Who knows whether you perhaps I wonder where do you think that came from? Do you think that was just a natural human instinct as a child? It's quite a clever thing to do at a young age.
I'd probably say I'd probably say TV. My older sisters, for one. I had sisters about 10 years older than me, and we would watch TV. And it's not. I've revisited these since then, but the early episodes of Saturday Night Live would have
Ah,
been on
okay.
TV when I was 5 or 6.
Right.
I've seen them now. They're horrible. I mean, they really are
Okay.
dreadful. The sketches are too long. But
Okay.
for a child, I think there was something about seeing adults wearing silly costumes,
Yeah.
hearing people applaud and laugh,
Yeah.
theme music, and being on
Yeah.
this television, that I thought that's got to be better than what I'm going through now. And so I think,
Yeah.
that, and then also my oldest sister in particular was very much a rebel when it came to what she would put up with from my father. And so I look at her and say, okay, so that's one of the ways, is to sarcasm in irreverence. I mean, especially if the death, I built this house, so under the pretext that I can therefore do whatever I want to you, or
Okay.
be belligerent and violent, like that. It was in comedy was a way of saying I don't really care,
Yeah.
or I'm going to get you in the end somehow. I'm going to come out better than you because I have a smile on my face, or
Yeah, or
whatever.
also some sort of solidarity very quickly with your sister to like
Oh yeah,
connect both your experiences, and to
yeah,
in some ways there's something joyfully and powerful about yourself as a child making a
yeah,
joke about that with someone else who feels the same way, because whilst someone's trying to control, you're empowering yourself because you're both saying we're above this, we can mock this, and we
Yeah,
can look at it from a higher state of consciousness or being. And so it's yeah, there's loads of layers to it, I think, isn't there? It's quite
yeah,
fascinating. Yeah, yeah,
yeah. And I think one thing with because we do have a lot of trauma comedy now, and that's what Baby Reindeer Part Two was satirizing was
yeah,
this that people they really want trauma, and a lot of the people that I admire over the years, they had a traumatic upbringing, but it went through a chrysalis. It went through some sort of chrysalis where instead of going on stage and saying
yeah,
I'm traumatized and this and that, they did something with it and they became characters or they became actors or musicians or whatever. And then maybe when they're 70 or 80 years old, then they write their autobiography and you go, oh my God, I never knew the guy was abused.
okay,
And now I think people, because they have nothing to say, or because the internet encourages anybody to do comedy, right? This means you never have to stop. You can always get on TikTok and do another voice.
yeah,
And people now they want to skip that. They want to skip the chrysalis and go right to I had this trauma, or even worse, they go I have to make up a trauma or make a bigger deal out of something that wasn't really traumatic, so I can talk about something on stage.
right,
Whereas, if you look at, Richard Pryor, I always go back to, here's a guy who had a very, very horrible childhood.
mm,
And then he comes out with all of these characters and types that he would have met along the way that aren't him,
yeah,
but stem from that place of hurt.
yeah,
But instead of going on and going hurt, 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 it's just he made something beautiful out of it.
mm,
And I think that's what it was for me. It was like I'm gonna go somewhere like a big city and try to do something with this, but you know, my dad would make his way into my characters, but never by name. Always, like a certain type who might have a character who would get laughs for not having a sense of humor. For example, a football coach who would say absurd things like, "I want you to give 110% of yourself. I want you to give 458% of yourself. I want you to divide yourself into five people. Four give 100%, one give 58%," and never being able to laugh at the nonsense that he was saying. And so as the crowd would laugh at these things, but the character was very serious, and he didn't like it when people laughed, and that would make the audience laugh more.
yeah.
So the trauma becomes something else now instead of the be all and end all. And then maybe when I'm 80, I'll write that book about how hard I had it as a child.
Yeah.
But I think yeah, I think if it can lead to a chrysalis, it's a good thing. That the art comes out of that.
Well, yeah, and I think art can be transformative. There can be certain pieces that might stick with you forever, that might be hugely influential. And so that's why I want to get in touch with you because I think your commitment to still creating some fantastic, brave pieces of art that are funny, that are topical, that really get you thinking, I think is fantastic. I hope you kind of keep creating, I think, and I hope you get a bigger audience. You certainly deserve it. For people who might be kind of waking up to some of this trauma stuff that's out there and wanting a
Yeah.
fresh perspective on it. I think you offer a kind of delightful, deep twist to how to think about that. And I think that's the fantastic thing. If you can laugh and think it and come away and be impacted in multiple different ways. It brings solidarity. It does inspire me that you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I thought it was a very brave piece. So the Anthony Burgess thing, you kind of got to the last six, and then it went to somebody else, did it?
Oh yeah, it was tough. It was
Yeah,
really weird too because they set it up to where you got invited to the do with the what do you call them? Oh, what's that word? Not hors d'oeuvres,
okay.
canapes.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
I don't
okay,
I don't do this a lot. Yeah, we got
okay,
canapes and free wine,
right,
and step by step. First off, I totally forgot I wrote it, so that
okay,
I got an email saying you've been longlisted. So, oh, that's cool. And
yeah,
then I was shortlisted. And I thought, well, that's great because you get a month to just prepare for all you got to do is show up in London
yeah,
uh, on a certain date, and you get there. And then once you're there, you're like, oh
yeah,
my God, they could not call my name. That's a possibility too,
right,
because the top prize was 3 grand. I was like, oh Christ, I wanted that so bad,
right,
but it's an honor. It's an honor to have
yeah,
been associated with a great writer.
yeah,
His writings I commend to anybody. I mean,
yeah,
one of the greatest things to come out of it reconnecting with what a great writer Anthony Burgess was. And here's somebody who has an amazing sense of humor. My girlfriend, for my birthday, she got me a Burgess book I hadn't read yet, and I just started it a couple of days ago. And there's a bit where William Shakespeare is, King James wanted the new Bible written in the early 1600s. So
Mhm.
the King James of this country commissioned a rewrite to the Bible
Okay.
from some new translators. And there's a scene where he has Ben Jonson makes a pitch to William Shakespeare, and William Shakespeare says, "Is there any money in this?" And I think that's a hilarious, very erudite, hilarious level of humor to suggest that William Shakespeare is asking, "Is there any money in this whole Bible thing?" It's brilliant. It's
Yeah.
brilliant, but it's also moral. There's a moral to that
Yeah.
kind
Yeah.
of like, does anybody do anything because it's free? And
Yeah.
but just I like the idea of everybody saying like, who they're going to get him to translate the Bible? They should ask me. I'm William Shakespeare. I should be translating the Bible. I'm the word man, you know. And so that's he's somebody I would look to and say that's the kind of humor I want to see, like whether it's on stage or on the screen or
Yeah.
the kind that presumes that people are have intelligence. And I still have that. I think we're naturally. I think human beings have it in them to be. You don't need to go to Oxford to be smart. That's a myth that this country's perpetuated
Sure. Yeah.
forever. You have to go to Oxford and Cambridge to be respected, and that's not true. In
Yeah.
fact, it's often quite the opposite. But
Yeah.
it's sick that they institutions like that start selling people things like artificial intelligence, and next thing you know, children are sold this idea that they're never enough unless they've got some device or and it's not true. I love the idea of kids cracking open books and getting lost and
Yeah.
or doing voices or putting on little weird plays of their own,
Yeah. For sure. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I hope we can return to that. I'm the thing that I'm hoping for now is some kind of stock market crash again, where we
Okay.
go into a depression and then everybody who knows how to live off of devices will succeed and inherit the earth. But who knows? I don't know. But wishful thinking.
Well, I mean, it's certainly a great accolade to your creative work that you got shortlisted, and the power of your word and the power of your thought. Um, and fingers crossed that will. So is that the piece that's on your website, the written piece?
Yeah, have you read it?
Yeah, I've read that. Yeah, I'll put a link to the in the video so people can check it
Oh,
out.
that'd be great. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah. Um, yeah, that's the piece. Yeah.
yeah,
So it's funny. It's 800-word limit, and I think it was 3,500 was my first rough draft, and
yeah,
I got so much to say about this horrible show,
yeah.
and it was funny. I think part of the appeal was that I had a different opinion, and
Right.
they mentioned it at the ceremony when they were going through the nominees,
Yeah.
and they said that the guy he had a contrary opinion
Right.
because it overwhelmingly got the series overwhelmingly got accolades, and I thought, but see, I like that challenge. I don't like it when things are too easy. I could go out there and write Trump jokes, and in San Francisco, I was getting my start when George Bush Jr. was doing all of his nonsense, and every comedian. It was as far as I saw it was covered. I wasn't a fan of George Bush, obviously, but it was covered. There was no need, as I saw it, for another comedian to go out there
Right.
and do
Okay.
George Bush impressions, but I would impersonate people who were upset about George Bush. Or
Okay. Right.
I said, I wrote a book actually, and it's my book about George Bush is, it's self-published, and those guys, and
Yeah.
that other layer because I don't believe it is just one half that's doing the damage. I believe it's just the totality, and people doing this binary dance now of I'm left, I'm right, or I'm
Yeah.
this and I'm that, and as you say, the two party thing that
Yeah.
it's the thing beyond that, or what you said about low vibrations, was it,
Yeah.
or lowered frequencies, which I'm not too expert on that, but I think I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Um, there's somebody I've been watching recently who's been talking about auras and how
Yeah.
that's part of our physical anatomy,
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
and I could be receptive to that for
Yeah,
sure.
there's a really interesting series of videos on my channel where I interview a woman called Judith Collins, who's an aura reader in Australia, and she's got some amazing sort of anecdotes about her life experience of seeing Aura since she was a child. I'd highly recommend watching those. You might find them
Yeah,
fascinating.
yeah,
And so, yeah, I think I suppose for me, when I was talking about that polarized, there's only two options. It's about now that I don't have a television, when I zoom out and I
yeah,
hear about people, I think it's important try to not see life like it's presented, like it is a television kind of series, so to speak, and to always zoom out and go, well, what are they not talking about that's around here?
yeah,
That are obvious. I think there's such an agenda to try and limit a worldview to this. You're either
yeah,
polarized or here, and they're trying to kind of just steer people.
yeah,
Creating order through chaos, I think, is the well something that George Bush used to say, isn't it?
yeah,
Was something that was offered up. But I think so. Always like being able to zoom out and think with intelligence what's not been said. I think is a good intellectual
yeah,
consideration, really.
absolutely.
And I think it's really valuable to just keep on laughing, no matter what you think about things. So. And what I really enjoyed hearing about is your anecdotes that you were chatting about your either your younger friend or your sister.
Yeah,
Humor is just an amazing thing. You can meet strangers and have a little bit of a laugh with a shopkeeper, can't you? Or there's
yeah,
always these possibilities in life in the real world, and I think laughter uh, is just a key human component that I think we should always try and nurture and tune into at times. You know, because sometimes there's a tendency to be a bit serious, isn't there? But then
yeah.
actually there's a real magic in that other dimension of how you feel in your stomach or in your chest, or if you're even so laughing so much that you're literally crying with laughter. There was a few times
Yeah.
when I was listening to Baby Reindeer and I was in the car and I was like literally going, "Oh my God, wow, that was a line and a half." You know, there's a couple of times where you just like,
I'm really
you,
glad to hear that. Yeah,
yeah,
it's a really glad to, it's I mean I love making those things. I've got tons of those albums from over the years and
yeah,
but I used to have this when I was doing the live gigs, it was this nice balance. It was like, I might be on the road for a few days and then I'd come back and okay, now I'm gonna do something in the studio.
yeah,
I've had to do more of the studio thing because of the venues and all of that and being
uh-huh,
on the out with the circuit. But you know, I'm probably going to force myself to make more. And just because when I'm in the middle of a project, I wouldn't say ebullient and happy all the time, but it's something like my faith comes out in my art, and I always had faith in my.
yeah,
It may not make me rich. I might not ever be understood or whatever, but as I'm making it, it's kind of like being in touch with my instincts.
yeah.
Like, I've been kind of every now and then I'll have these thoughts here in July, like that's it, I'm all washed up or something like that. I said, wait, so you just did this back in May.
Yeah.
This was an hour and 42-minute album, and then you did this follow-up thing, and that's not that long ago, but I've always got this kind of in the back of my mind, like, if I keep making the art and keep having faith in the art and never try to never to lose that.
Yeah, well, it sounds like it's an integral part of your life force energy, isn't it? It's almost like a
Yeah,
calling or an intuition that you need to keep
yeah,
doing it. And I think recently I've been reading up about the science of alchemy and somebody who's studying that kind of stuff. And he really talks about how, yeah, that there is something about that art when you're sealing something and creating it and getting to the
yeah,
end and going, right, that's rendered, that's the end of this little project. There is
yeah,
something amazing about like you thought of that, you created it, you stretched it out here, you edited, you fine-tuned it, and you finished it. And there is
yeah,
something magical there that is possibly quite unique to humans, isn't it?
yeah.
That you're really in tune with, and I would encourage you to keep going with it. And I think
Thank you.
trying to figure out ways to get more people to find you. So one of the things that popped up in my head was like when I looked earlier, when I put in Baby Reindeer Part 2 on Google,
Mm.
I think you would probably benefit from having a page on your website called Baby Reindeer Part 2 because when I flipped onto videos, it came up
Mm.
near the top of the search. But having an independent individual page that says Baby Reindeer Part 2 would be good because then
Mm.
Google would find it and know there's a page called Baby Reindeer Part 2 because there
Oh
is
yeah.
quite a few people looking for that. and trying to
Mhm.
find out if there's a follow-up series. So I think
Yeah.
on your Weebly site, if you had a page that was different, you might find that they might list the video piece, and then people could kind of discover that.
All right.
So that's worthwhile, kind of like having an eye out for, just trying to figure out how more people can kind of because I think the more people that start laughing and like checking out your stuff, it's just for me, I think
Yeah.
of that as a vibrational kind of thing. It just starts a ball of energy going, and you're a
Yeah.
very funny guy. So
Thank you very much. I mean, I've got some other ideas. It's just, yeah, it's just making the decision to sit down and do them. Be like, it's
yeah,
like these days you get, all right, I gotta get a regular job, man. Like I need the money, you know. I gotta find some typing work or something like that. And then lately I've just been thinking, like, you know, sod all that. As impractical as it is, you just just do the comedy and hope the rest. It's been 30 years, I think 25, 30 years of doing this, you know,
yeah.
and it really did work out. I ended up in San Francisco living out of my car. I had no plans. I had, I think, $200 in cash on my name. You know, then I just walked into, I was in a very fortunate place at a very fortunate time. Um, I remember there was a guy, one of the guys at the open mic. He looked just like Malcolm X. He had the black guy with the horn rimmed glasses, he had the same facial structure and everything, very jazz looking, you know. And he ran the venue, a little coffee shop in San Francisco. When I was done, it was a free open mic, but he'd always wave me over and he'd shake my hand and he had a $10 bill cupped in it. And
Ah,
I'll never forget that guy. I wish I remember his name, but it was
lovely.
this lovely, very human gesture of saying,
Yeah,
I think you're weird and wacky and far out there, and like, you know, but you'll always get $10 from me.
nice.
And it was like little beautiful stories like that along the way. And the next thing you know, you end up in England, you know, 20 years later, you know, and coming to the land of what you think are weirdos. And, you know, of course, I've had to find out that, you know, Britain's different as projected to America than it actually is in reality.
I'm sure. Yeah,
You know, we get the young ones, Blackadder and Monty Python, and then it's easy for Americans to think it's all like that, but we don't realize there's also Are You Being Served and On the Buses and all this other stuff. Oh my God, there's a lot of direct, man.
yeah,
But yeah, it's been one of those. I'd say it's a very non-traditional road that I've been on, and I guess I wouldn't have it any other way. But sometimes it is in the moments of despair, you can envy the careerist and say, I wished I had that kind of smile, shake the hand, and false compliments to just to have that bedrock level of security. But you know, I think I know that's not. First off, I can never do that, so it's not. It's a moot point. But then also, it's the feeling I get when I'm making something is irreplaceable. It's like no
yeah,
matter what, I've got this to look forward to today. I've got to get from point A to point B. I mean, when I was making that album, I'd probably start each day maybe about 11 a.m. And it was like, you know, by the end of the day, I want to get this sketch sequence done, you know, and I almost never write anything down either. So it's just like in my head, it's like I want him to get out of the comedy club and meet this girl and
yeah.
get in the car by the end of the day. And then, you know, so the little plans and stuff throughout the day that it, you know, and what you said about order and chaos, I think the two are, we got to have both, you know. And a lot of these, you know, these new right wing pundits, they'll pitch this idea of order, order. We need
Mm.
more order, and they're
Yeah,
so
indeed,
humorless. On top of everything, on top of being wrong about everything politically, they're also very, very humorless, dry, gray,
indeed. Yeah.
boring people. They just more order, and a woman should be this, and a man should be this, and there's something about chaos that's just irreplaceable. It's like that's the violent belly laugh. That's the, you know, doubled over in stitches. You know,
Well,
so
that's a
it's,
great place to end because we're just about to finish on time. So thanks very much, Will. Been lovely
no
to
worries.
see you. I will
Yeah.
be in touch. Take care. Keep shining bright.
All right. You too. Thanks, Graham.
Take care.
Bye bye.
Bye.